when he got inaugurated. This was in the middle of the Great Depression, of course, 1933. And during the term of the previous president, Republican Herbert Hoover, who had a disastrous presidency in economic terms, during Hoover's time in office, there had been a series of banking panics, people making runs on banks. It happened in specific parts of the country in 1930 and in 1931. But then in 1932, there was a really big surge in bank failures in both the West and the Midwest. And there started to be a national panic. In 1932, when that national panic was taking hold, individual states started declaring bank holidays. Nevada was the first one who did it, but then other states, including Michigan, followed suit. Individual states started declaring holidays. They started declaring that all banks would be closed on specific days, basically just to stop people from rushing in and pulling all their deposits and collapsing more banks. But doing that at a piecemeal, in a piecemeal way, doing that state by state, sort of happenstance, random state by random state by random state, it wasn't enough. And the problem was spreading. And the fall of 1932, November 1932, that's when Roosevelt was elected in the presidential election. He was elected to replace Hoover in a landslide. Roosevelt won 42 states that year. But even as Roosevelt won, and everybody knew there was going to be a new sheriff in charge, right? There was going to be somebody new in charge in Washington who was going to have radically different economic policies, still the banking system was having conniptions. And there was this problem because we were still on the old calendar, right? Roosevelt won that election in November, but he wasn't actually able to get sworn in until March 4th. When he did get sworn in, though, he immediately took action. Desperate times called for desperate measures. FDR was inaugurated on March 4th. 2 days later, on March 6th, he declared for the first time a nationwide bank holiday to freeze the banking system in place, to finally put a national system, a national response in place to shore up banking coast to coast, to give Americans everywhere assurance that they would not lose their money in the banks. And after that, we would never again, as a country, wait that long for a new president to take over after he'd been elected in November. When FDR sprang into action in March 1933, when he stopped the national banking crisis 2 days after he was sworn in, he also, at the same time, invented a whole new thing to communicate with the American people, to explain to them what he and his new administration were doing and how it was supposed to work to stop the national run on the banks. FDR was sworn in March 4th. He instituted that federal bank holiday on March 6th. On March 12th, he gave his first fireside chat. And it was about the banks crisis.
My friends, I want to talk for a few minutes with the people of the United States about banking. To talk with the comparatively few who understand the mechanics of banking, but more particularly with the overwhelming majority of you who use banks for the making of deposits and the drawing of checks. I want to tell you what has been done in the last few days and why it was done and what the next steps are going to be. First of all, let me state the simple fact that when you deposit money in a bank, the bank does not put the money into a safe deposit vault. It invests your money in many different forms of credit, in bonds, in commercial paper, in mortgages, and in many other kinds of loans. In other words, the bank puts your money to work to keep the wheels of industry and of agriculture turning round. A comparatively small part of the money that you put into the bank is kept in currency, an amount which in normal times is wholly sufficient to cover the cash needs of the average citizen.
He was a good explainer. That was a good explanation to the American people of what was going on. And he went on to explain that although most banks were well run, not all banks were well run. He said some were run by bankers who were, in his words, incompetent or dishonest. And he said that, people losing confidence in the banks had caused people, understandably, to rush to get their money out of the banks. That had created the present crisis, which had led him and his brand spanking new government to step in and take over to try to stabilize the whole mess.
Let me make it clear to you that the banks will take care of all needs when the people find that they can get their money, that they can get it when they want it, for all legitimate purposes. The phantom of fear will soon be laid. People will again be glad to have their money where it will be safely taken care of, and where they can use it conveniently at any time. I can assure you, my friends, that it is safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than it is to keep it under the mattress.
I can assure you it is safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than under the mattress. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, that was his first ever fireside chat. It was 90 years ago exactly, 90 years ago yesterday. And just in case you were under the mistaken impression that anything ever changes ever, here was President Biden, 9 a.m. this morning.
Today, thanks to the quick action of my administration over the past few days, Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe. Your deposits will be there when you need them. Because of the actions that our regulators have already taken, every American should feel confident that their deposits will be there if and when they need them.
Assure you that it is safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than under the mattress, in other words. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. 90 years apart. Same message from the president. 90 years apart. Another bank run. And the reason President Biden today was able to say, you don't have to put your money under the mattress, it's safe, we're making sure of it, everybody who deposited money in these banks will be able to get their money out of these banks. The reason he was able to promise that today is also because of FDR. Because after Franklin D. Roosevelt was sworn in March 1933, and then 2 days later he took control of the banking crisis, and then 6 days later he gave his first fireside chat in which he explained the whole banking crisis to the American people and told them what he was doing to get a hold of it. Just a few weeks after that, FDR signed legislation that created the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which does exactly what it says. If you make deposits of your own money into an American bank, any federal bank that is insured by FDIC can guarantee you that the federal government will provide insurance for your deposit. So no matter what stupidity your bank gets up to, no matter what happens to your stupid bank, the money you deposited is insured. You will be able to get it back. FDR created FDIC in 1933. Right after he was inaugurated. Today, we are still benefiting. Right? And today in America, we're having another one of those thank you FDR kind of days. Because Wednesday last week, a bank called Silvergate was first to go kaput. This was a bank in California that was all tied up in the cryptocurrency racket. They went kaput on Wednesday. Senator Elizabeth Warren, who literally ended up being a senator and a presidential candidate, who became a national public figure at all, because of her hard-nosed